Welcome to E3, Engage and Empower with Empathy, a podcast brought to you by the Empathy Collective, a consulting firm that helps business leaders inspire change, one conversation at a time. We are building a community of like-minded leaders and experts who all share the same passion, taking care of people at work. Whether you are a blue-collar worker or white-collar worker, small business owner or corporate executive, you belong in this community. Today, we're diving into the world of aesthetics, but not just the surface level kind. My guest, Chantal Mazzone, believes beauty is about so much more than treatments or technology. It's about kindness, confidence, and creating an environment where people feel truly seen. Chantal is a results-driven, forward-thinking leader with 20 years of experience in aesthetic medicine. With a background in nursing, business, and communications, she has worn many hats: instructor, trainer, speaker, and now the founder of Cosmedica Aesthetics, a thriving medical aesthetics practice where empathy is at the heart of every patient experience. In our conversation, we'll explore how empathy guides Chantal's leadership, the way she mentors her team of experts, and how she helps patients transform not just how they look, but how they feel. From facial injectables to skin health solutions, her mission goes far beyond aesthetics. It's about uncovering each person's best self and lighting the way toward confidence and positivity. This is E3, Engage and Empower with Empathy. Welcome to the show, Chantal. It's really nice to have you here. You have a very unique background when it comes to leadership and aesthetic medicine. So I'm really excited to dig into this dialogue and learn about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about your journey. You have 20 years of experience in aesthetic medicine. So maybe for the benefit of my listeners, you could tell us a little bit about what that is. What is aesthetic medicine? How did you end up going down that path? And clearly you're enjoying it because you've been doing it for 2 decades. You've had experience in business, you've had experience in communications, nursing. So somehow you landed on this sweet spot. And I'd love to know how that happened. And then we can talk about your journey from there.
I knew that I loved aesthetics. I hadn't figured out how I was going to be applying it in my workplace. So the easiest thing to do when you know that you're going to be working for a business and applying aesthetics is go to business school. So that's what I did. I went to business school first. And that first summer, after doing a stream of marketing and sales, I had the pleasure to work for a dermatologist in Oakville. And I got involved in her practice and in clinical trial research and came across an aesthetic trial that involved injectables. And I found this to be extremely interesting because I never knew about injectables before. And by injectables, I mean the use of neurotoxins and hyaluronic acid injections to restore youth and volume into the tissues and provide patients with confidence. And to me, being able to, have a type of treatment that brings confidence and happiness to patients is super rewarding. So I asked this dermatologist at the time, how do I get involved in the injectable side of it? Like, this research stuff is very interesting, but I would love to be face to face with the patient. And she said, well, honey, you got to go back to school and become a nurse. So there I go again. Of course, I finished my business school, and every summer I worked back with her. And we had a great time building on my knowledge and awareness of the whole aesthetic avenue. So this was a dermatologist that had a medical OHIP practice, which involves, mole checks and skincare checks, acne patients, things that you would go to a dermatologist for. But she also had a cosmetic side to her business. So to answer your question on how the aesthetics component fits in, is this dermatologist had an aesthetic business that would provide non-surgical aesthetic treatments to bring confidence to patients, whether that was that acne patient that went on that OHIP prescription for pimples, for example. Then there was also an aesthetic side of the business that had a laser machine that would help to speed up the acne scarring and to kill acne bacteria and to help turn over the skin. So that would be an example of a patient that would benefit from both the medical and the aesthetic side to it. So there's patients that have also hyperpigmentation, so that's sun damage. And so the medical side is, you give a prescription and you assess to make sure that there's no skin cancer. But then the aesthetic side is doing rejuvenation treatments to help turn over those cells and help to make a more youthful appearance. So not only get rid of the sunspots that could be precancerous, but also to have a more uniform, light skin, even tone complexion, getting rid of all the browns and the reds and having just a poreless, flawless look, which is going to give confidence back to you. So there's two sides to it. So needless to say, at the end of the 4 years of my undergrad, I went back to school and I did a 1 year medical aesthetics diploma to understand about all the different lasers that were involved because there's lots of laser physics and things that I didn't even know existed that I learned over the 4 years. And then I went to school to become a nurse. And sure enough, had to do my time in the hospital and work at a nursing home and all the things that didn't apply to aesthetics, but for me to be able to become a nurse. And then ended up going back into, the aesthetics field and worked for a couple great plastic surgeons and dermatologists in Toronto, and now own my own practice in downtown Burlington.
That's such an interesting journey. I I'd love to know your experience in nursing schools. I talked to a medical doctor recently, and he was saying how empathy in the medical field isn't necessarily taught in med school. So that bedside manner and, what would you would think would come naturally to a doctor, right, in a caring profession. But he said, interestingly, in nursing school, empathy was part of the curriculum. So was that part of your curriculum?
Yes, absolutely. And I do think it's quite interesting because you're absolutely right. The physicians are typically in and out. They see, maybe 100 patients today a day at the hospital versus the nurses are doing 12-hour shifts and they only have four patients. And they're in there because they need you, right? They're sick patients or they're, in the case of a nursing home, they require you to do their activities of daily living, which could involve personal care, washing them, so you do need to be empathetic with their situation, or if they were involved for a specific medical treatment, they have pneumonia or they can't breathe, and all these exercises you need to learn how to be, empathetic towards their situation and understand how to help them by understanding their signs and symptoms and their disabilities. And so that is a very big component of the program, which is so interesting, because it's so important. And I think that even as physicians, definitely they should be exposed to it, but even business professionals, I think that's lacking in the business curriculum. And I can say that having done both degrees, there's always sales and marketing and business and all these things, but sometimes, in order to develop proper rapport with any client, is being empathetic about their situation. And nursing is a fantastic field to be able to be well rounded in terms of the way that you speak to anybody, really. It's helped me certainly to be, I think, a better boss and a kinder business owner and all of these things because it does circle back into so many different aspects of business and life and patient care.
I think that's wonderful that you were able to bridge what you learned in business school and nursing school and use both of those to your advantage in your current business. I've had guests who also went through business school like I did, and we've lamented that we were never taught the soft skills needed to lead a team, for example. So it's all about, here's how you do sales, here's how you do marketing, here's supply chain, here's strategy. So you got to see both worlds. You went through business school, you saw the curriculum there. You went to nursing school and you saw the curriculum there, and you were able to marry the two to really bring a powerful skill set to your practice. So I'd love to know, bringing that skill set to your own business, how were you able to then infuse that into your leadership style with your team? And then how did that team dynamic then translate to stronger empathy towards patients coming into your practice?
Great question. It's a difficult one to answer directly, but I can say that you need to be a good role model, right? I'll give you an example. Circumstance of how to deliver a treatment, for example. If I can be empathetic that there could be body mechanics that are required to conduct the M-Sculpt treatment, for example, which is one of the services that we offer, then, I'm able to support my staff and design the most appropriate protocols to make the service as comfortable for the provider and also for the receiver, the patient. Being empathetic about understanding it and having had done it, a lot of the physicians, when they're designing these protocols, they aren't the ones delivering the treatments and they never were the ones that did it. They just mandate the protocol and then move on to the next patient. But having been the person to do all the protocols and to be able to understand what they need and truly be empathetic about, some of the limitations or some of the struggles or something that would make it easier, it is helped me lead the team in a helpful way, to be able to make it enjoyable for all of us to do and work together. And also, of course, provide a great patient experience.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge you've had as a leader of of a small team in a clinic?
The biggest challenge I would have to say is I love patient care and bedside manners. Letting the team do their thing, it's hard not to want to always be meeting the patient and seeing the patient because I do really love that part of it. And when you grow and you have to use different hats, it's a struggle, I think, because I'm so passionate about doing the actual service itself, as that's how I grew up in the industry. It's hard to step away. And of course, I have the utmost confidence in my team. They're fantastic. But I do love working with the patient, and so stepping away from that a little bit in some cases because you can't do it all has been a challenge. But sometimes it just means that I have to pop in for a little checkpoint to say, hi, how are the kids? How is everything going? Because it's very rewarding to have that interaction and that relationship with the patient and just to even see their progress.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that that was probably the hardest part to let go as you build and expand your team and empower your team to be the 100% patient facing group. I'd love to hear some stories of how you've served patients. You talked about restoring confidence and uncovering their best selves with these treatments. Why would a patient come to you to begin with? So it sounds like they're given a protocol from the physician first, and then that's handed over to you. What does that process look like, and what is their typical state of mind when they come to see you?
So we get all sorts of different requests. Our business is divided into three different categories. We have our injectable category, we have our laser category, and then we have our skincare category. And we have three different age groups. Let's say we'll have the young teens, and they could be maybe from 16 to 25, and then we have the young. So they're maybe looking for treatments like acne, like I was mentioning. They might be looking for a little bit of transformation. Maybe some of the younger ladies in their 20s want to have a bit of a lip augmentation, or perhaps they have some confidence issues with the shape of their nose. And we have some treatments to make a more straight, profile in the shape of the nose, or they have more of a structural change, with an overbite or an underbite, and injections can be used to add symmetry and change the shape of the face a little bit. So there could be that with a younger individual. Then we have our, let's say, 30 to 45 age group, and that is more the young professional that is competitive in the workplace and maybe has a couple kids and they are tired, but they don't want to look tired. They're more of a restorative care. They're tired eyes and they want to have anti-aging treatments to get rid of their dark circles, to lift up their brows because they're starting to experience a little bit of collagen loss. Perhaps they were picking their pimples when they're from their 20s and now they're left with red marks or acne scars. Or perhaps they were sun worshippers, they have a cottage and now they have sunspots that they need to address. So there's a concoction of different treatment requests in terms of that age group. And then there's the older patients, let's say 45, 50s, up to really 80s. I have some 80-year-olds. It's amazing seeing the journey, and their kids and their grandkids are now coming, which is beautiful. It's so nice. They're more in the corrective phase, right? And so they're interested in restoring a youthful contour, and they want to look as good as they feel is what I constantly hear. And it's that
Mm,
I'm seeing my mother's face in the mirror that I don't like, or there's, sometimes a separation. Unfortunately, that age is a very common age to have a divorce after the kids go off to university. If there's no commonality with spouses, then sometimes that's a separation phase. And then in which case they're quote unquote back on the market and they're dating and they haven't in a long time. So they're starting to care back about themselves because the attention is more on kids. And I'm stereotyping, not everybody we have sees families, but or has families, but just to kind of group it into different age groups so you can understand the different types of patients that we see and the type of treatments that we offer. Sometimes it's that phase of that group of individuals that require a little bit more self-care and they want to be intentional about carving time for themselves and correcting some of these things because it's affecting their confidence. We see a lot of different people. We do have a lot of different treatments, different machines. We have vein treatment. Sometimes it's affecting the way that they have restless leg syndrome because they've crossed their legs or wore high heels for so long and they now have varicose veins or they don't want to wear shorts. And so they come in for confidence issues for that. And we do sclerotherapy, leg injections, or maybe they have had an injury, and this could be any age from 30s to 60s, 70s, and they've had either a boating accident or a hip replacement or knees or whatever back issues, and they need to do M-sculpt treatments to restore wellness in the range of motion and gait function again, before they can then work on the aesthetics like losing fat and building muscle. So we have a wide range of treatments and so many different types of patients that come in with all ethnicities and ages for different types of concerns. But all of them have a common thread, which is that they care about the way that they look because it affects the way that they feel. Our message is always if it bothers you, it's important. And consistency is key. We have the science. Do you have the commitment? That's a common question, and that we talk about in consultations, because everything does take commitment, and it's a matter of choosing to be intentional to carve time for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's certainly important. I'm I'm curious because I loved hearing the stories across the different age groups and generations and how their problems or their challenges shift over time. Uh, and I was nodding my head as you were talking about the 30 to 45 age group. How
Yeah.
can you not look tired when you have two little children at home and a job and all that?
Can I just say one other thing that just popped into my, like, for my 8-year-olds is so interesting because they said, like, oh, this is going to be my last year. I'm going to do this. And they keep coming back year after year, you know? And it's kind of funny because it's like, what age do you decide, okay, you know what, from this point forward, I just don't care anymore. The priorities change, the focus is a little different. Maybe your benchmark gradually starts to decline. You have less standards, to a certain degree, because you realize that you just, the fact is you're getting older and there are certain things that come along with it. But I think that it's very beautiful when you don't see the people giving up. They continue to care about how they look because it affects the way they feel, and they want to try their best to be their best.
I think that's an important point that this is about self-confidence and self-healing. It's not about doing it for someone else or, comparing to other people. We all fall into that trap. But it sounds like once a patient makes that commitment, doesn't matter how old you are, once you're committed, you're committed. I'd love to know how going back to the empathy piece and how you create that intimate connection with your patients. Clearly you are intimately involved in their life story and oftentimes see them evolve over time, and then their family members come in, so you see their whole world in many cases. How do you instill that sense of empathy in yourself and your team, and how does that then translate to a patient who's very satisfied with their results? So, because I have a feeling that there is a connection there, with this connection that you're creating between your patient and your team, and that must fuel it. So obviously you have the science, you have all the tools and the technologies, but there's something more than that. And what is that extra piece that you bring?
I think it's because I'm genuinely passionate, and people that work with me or talk to me, they sense we only bring forward treatments that we really believe in. And when you believe in something and it makes you happy to help people, that makes you empathetic. And when you have something that works because you have the experience in it and you see that you can relate and you can understand and you're empathetic, for what they're struggling with. And you know, in the deepest of your hearts, that if they just stick to this regime, that they're going to come to the end, and you've seen that progress and you can show them the before and afters of other patients, then you're charismatic about it because you know it's going to help them. And then when they do it, they're like crying, hugging you, happy. It brings that bond, it fortifies that relationship. And we've been very selective to only bring forward, team members that share that passion and genuinely care, because that is a big part of our mission statement at Cosmedica. We want to genuinely offer the best for the patients and only recommend things that we know are going to help them look and feel their best, which is our tagline, uncover your best self. When we're always looking for the best outcome of them, and we genuinely stand by our values and our missions, and we only offer them what we know is to be the best for that indication, then it kind of is a full circle.
You talked about patients coming to you, giving you a hug. They're so happy. Is there a particular success story that you'd like to share that you were really excited about, where the patient did hug you and they're crying and they're like, "Wow, this is transformative."
I can think of one person that came to mind, that she was in her 40s and she loved horseback riding. She recently had a separation with her spouse and she had two little girls. So there was a couple different things. She fell off her horse that caused an injury. So now she's in her 40s and she can't wear high heels. And she has a hard time doing certain things, like even squatting to go to the bathroom above a low toilet, which you would not imagine, in your 40s having that struggle. You can't even think to wrap your head around that. That would be something that you would imagine an
Mm.
elderly patient to be concerned about. But sometimes an injury takes you there. So the first step was to, get her to be able to walk properly. And even sitting on a plane, she had to turn down opportunities to travel Europe and things like that because she just did not have the wellness and the range of motion and the physical strength. So we did a series of M-Sculpt treatment with her. It was actually a year of treatments. And she was also working with a personal trainer and, physiotherapist. And they didn't know about what the M-Sculpt treatments were, funny enough, but they would measure her and they would, see her in between our treatments. And they said, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, keep it up because this is working, right? And it was incredible. So to give some context to your listeners about what the M-Sculpt treatment is, it's a treatment that involves radio frequency and high intensity focused electric stimulation to your muscles. So it can be applied to 10 different areas of the body. We used it in her case to her quads, her outer thighs, her hamstrings, her inner thighs, and her buttocks to really get a foundation and strength in her whole posture and be able to regain function from after her injury. And when the muscles were strengthened, then she wasn't going to be compensating, and then her knees wouldn't have pressure. And it was just kind of a whole trickling effect. But needless to say, she is now able to restore full function. She's wearing high heels. She's traveled now to Europe and she's had a couple big trips. She has been able to get back onto her horse. She's no longer in pain. So that's all very incredible and super rewarding. And then in tandem with this, she also, because of her separation, started to care about some of the insecurity she had with her acne scarring on her face. And even though she was in her 40s, she was still getting some adult blemishes, probably just related to increased androgen hormone release of stress due to the separation. But we did do 3 different treatments on her face. So we call it the Axion Trio, and we did hyaluronic acid treatments, and we did M-base to lift and contour the face. And then we also did some microneedling treatments, and that helped to just really rejuvenate her face. And now she doesn't have to wear makeup. She's confident. She can walk, like all of the things, and she just exudes so much joy and happiness. And again, it just brings a full circle. When we see our patients happy, we just cannot help but just love what we do. Like it just brings us so much joy to be able to give that happiness to patients. That's the best type of nursing, the elective care that makes you feel good inside, makes them feel incredible, and keeps them referring and coming back.
That's such a great story, and I love how she literally got a full transformation. So first it was her injury, and then you worked with her face. You really almost created a new person. I'm sure she feels like a new person now, thanks to the work that you've done. very rewarding. As a business owner with a team, for other leaders listening to this conversation right now, especially the small business owners out there who are working hard and trying to juggle the responsibilities of leading a team and also serving clients, what is one piece of advice you would give those leaders out there who are struggling to find that balance between leadership of a team and interfacing with the client and taking care of the client?
To follow our own advice that we give our patients because, a burnt out leader is not going to be very helpful. So we do need to be intentional about carving time for ourselves, whether that's an hour a week, going for a massage, whatever it is that you need to do to make sure that you can be productive with the way that you're leading and not be coming from a position of burnt out is very important, in my opinion. Also, to lead with the best intentions always in mind in terms of your happiness of your staff, because when they're happy, that's going to be a whole positive energy and environment which the patients read on very quickly. And also, of course, the happiness of the patients, finding your staff, like getting that beautiful dynamic within the office so that it's all positive with this, along with the same mission. There was some adjusting, like every business owner, maybe staff is not the right fit and you need to make some tweaks in your team. But once you do get that team, to be very appreciative for everything that they do, and carve the times for the team bonding as well, right? It's important. We do that at least quarterly. We'll go and we'll do a lunch and shopping, and we'll do some type of fun team building exercise, because fortifying that bond and that charisma in the office is so important outside of business hours. We'll laugh, we'll talk about their kids and things that are not business related on purpose, just to really have that connection. Sometimes a conference is a great opportunity for that, to all go away together so that there's that play time in between work time. And it's hard. It's hard wearing lots of hats. Aside of a business owner, I'm also a mom of 3 little kids, which has not been at the talk in this podcast, but I have a 5, 7, and 9-year-old. And there's lots of hats there too. I have a husband and a dog and all of the things. So, I get it. But just to create boundaries, of course, we have goals, but to create boundaries, to believe in yourself, to believe in your team, to set the appropriate parameters in place, to just compartmentalize all of these things so that when you're home and you're not working also. And, when the kids are asleep, you're also being, attentive to your husband. Like, I think it's really important to just not blur the lines, because that's when, burnout happens. You're not going to be successful with anything, in my opinion.
I think that's great advice. And I've heard that several times from some small business owners, where boundary setting and avoiding burnout is really critical to their success and their team's success. So thank you for sharing that and adding another data point to the many ones I've already received from business owners who are trying to balance it all. It sounds like you've got the formula figured out, and you're at that stage where you've been very intentional about your hires and the people coming onto your team align with your values. And now it's just a matter of keeping them engaged, ensuring they feel like they're cared for. And I love that you're having fun. I think that's important, especially when you're in a very fast-paced business environment. You tend to forget to just step aside and have fun for a day.
And if you do what you love, it feels that you're not working, right? To speak on that
Yes.
fun point, right? If you don't like what you're doing, then it's going to feel treacherous, right? But for you to be doing what you love, it feels like you're not working. Making it fun is I think, well worth it.
100% support that, and fully agree that if we could all just live in a world where we do what we love, I think the world would be a better place. Thank you so much for joining me, Chantal. It was a real pleasure learning about your journey and your business. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here too.
If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And if you would like to learn more about the Empathy Collective, check out our website, theempathycollective.com. Life is too short. Let's take care of each other at work so that together we can make this world a better place.